Is Europe ready for potential strikes from Iran? And what is its plan if Russia or the United States withdraw from negotiations to end the war in Ukraine? These are just some of the questions answered by the head of European diplomacy, Kaia Kallas, in an interview with Radio Liberty. The tough questions were asked by Zoriana Stepanenko. Let's keep watching.
Russia is making maximalist demands. That's exactly how it always acts in negotiations. Now is the last moment to put our demands on the table. Our plan was very clear. On the one hand, to support Ukraine, and on the other, to put pressure on Russia.
Who should speak with Russia on behalf of the European Union? In the case of direct dialogue? Are you ready to be that person despite being on Russia's wanted list? You called the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei a defining moment and the opening of a path to a different Iran. What outcome of this war does the European Union hope for? We
did not start this war, so questions about its objectives should first be addressed to those who initiated it. However, in fact, the objectives were very clearly defined regarding Iran's missile program, which poses a threat to all countries in the region. Of course, there is also the question of what will happen next. They targeted or have been targeting Ali Khamenei, and that's it. The leadership. Naturally, no one will mourn them because they truly oppressed the Iranian people. Now the question is what happens next. Is a democratic Iran possible? Obviously not right away. But still, opportunities arise for people if the repressive regime is weakened.
What is the European Union doing to prevent further escalation of the conflict, which increasingly risks turning into a large-scale regional war with global consequences?
Yes, we are calling for restraint. Tomorrow there will be a meeting of the foreign ministers of European countries and the Gulf countries, where we will discuss what else we can do to truly de-escalate tensions and achieve a ceasefire. After all, there is a risk that the situation could spiral out of control if mutual strikes begin, and this will continue further. At the same time, of course, if Iran now targets all the countries around it, in the end, it doesn't have that many options. So in any case, this will end at some point. In addition, it should be understood that when Iran is at war, it is essentially fighting alone, together with its proxies. Russia does not support them, and this is very different from other situations.
Is the European Union prepared for a possible wave of refugees from Iran? This is
one of the risks. There are threats of disruption to supply chains and trade routes, as well as risks of migration pressure towards us, because people will want to flee from the war. So yes, these are all the risks that we really need to take into account.
The number of civilian casualties is rising, and civilian property and infrastructure are being destroyed. Does the European Union have a plan to help those affected? After all, local residents say they feel as if they are being collectively punished. How should we respond to this?
The European Union has always been a provider of humanitarian aid. In the case of Iran, we have also supported civil society. But as I have already emphasized, there is a very repressive regime there. During the protest in January, they killed 17,000 people, and this has been going on for years. So yes, we are trying to help people, but of course we do not support the regime.
France, the United Kingdom, and Germany have stated that they may take proportionate defensive actions to destroy Iranian missile sites. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has stated that it may strike European countries in response. Do you consider Europe to be sufficiently protected, given that an Iranian drone reached Cyprus, where a British military base is located?
We need to understand that Iran's capabilities are not unlimited, especially if its major allies do not provide support. As the Americans have also stated, their target is missile launchers and missile factories. Therefore, Iran's ability to inflict damage may also be more limited than they try to portray. So it is always also a battle of narratives.
How do you assess the idea of extending the French nuclear umbrella to other European countries?
That is France's decision. It's good that such discussions are ongoing and that there is a willingness to cooperate with other countries on this issue. After all, I think that in recent months, the topic of strengthening defense capabilities has been raised more and more often.
You have proposed a list of concessions that should be demanded from Russia as part of a possible peaceful settlement in Ukraine. Have you already received any response from European capitals? What are they saying?
Yes, I presented this proposal to the foreign ministers and we will continue to discuss it. Obviously, we should also support Ukraine diplomatically. If certain concessions are to be demanded from the Ukrainian side, then there must also be clear concessions from Russia. After all, we must not forget there is one aggressor and one victim. So if demands are being made of the victim, then without a doubt there must also be concessions from Russia as well. There are different levels of these concessions. One is concessions that mirror the demands already being made of Ukraine. For example, restrictions on the Ukrainian army. If Ukraine has to limit its army, then Russia must do the same. Another level involves demands that take into account the interests of Europe. After all, we still have security concerns regarding Russia. So my position is that if we want a long-lasting and sustainable peace, it can't just be words. We really need to see actions from Russia that prove it will not pose a threat to its neighbors.
According to the latest media reports, Russia is threatening to withdraw from the negotiations if Ukraine does not hand over the entire Donbass. Do you think Moscow is bluffing?
Russia is making maximalist demands. That's exactly how it always acts in negotiations. It makes maximalist demands, asks for things that never belong to it, then issues ultimatums, uses force, and it expects that there will always be people in the West who will offer it something it never had. So it's obvious that maximalist demands from Russia cannot be met with a minimalist response. And here I return once again to the demands we have on our side. Some say they are unrealistic, but excuse me, Russia's demands are also unrealistic. If they demand, say, the entire Donbass, which they haven't even been able to conquer militarily in 11 years.
But do the European capitals support your list of demands?
In Europe, we have 27 democracies, so such discussions take time. But it's important that when we are in such a position, there are also demands from Europe. We are not going to give anything away for free. We also want to see concessions from the Russian side. Do
you have a backup plan in case the negotiations on Ukraine fail?
Our plan was very clear. On the one hand, to support Ukraine, and on the other, to put pressure on Russia. We see that things are not going very well for Russia. Its economy is not in the best shape. They had to raise taxes. They have major problems with recruiting soldiers. So if we continue this pressure, there will come a point when the aggressor may simply run out of money to fund this war. If we recall the times when Russia was fighting in Afghanistan, they stopped when they could no longer sustain that war.
Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the United States may be considering June as a deadline for ending the war between Ukraine and Russia. If that's the case, there are only 3 months left. Is the European Union ready to take the process into its own hands if the US steps aside?
That's why I'm saying that now is the last moment to put our demands on the table, because this is also what Europe is expected to do. But I want to emphasize one thing. Back in February of last year, that is more than a year ago, Ukraine had already agreed to an unconditional ceasefire, while Russia has simply been playing games ever since. So I wouldn't put them on the same level when one side hasn't agreed to peace at all and the other is ready for peace. In fact, the war would end if Russia simply stopped the bombing.
Volodymyr Zelensky wants a clear date for Ukraine's accession to the European Union in a potential peace agreement. However, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen considers this unrealistic. What kind of compromise is possible here?
This is a good example of why Europe needs to be present at the negotiating table, because there are clear demands that concern Europe. And it is we who must discuss them. This cannot be decided by the Americans or the Russians. It is obvious that Ukraine's place is in Europe, and joining the European Union is the strongest security guarantee. We are stating this very clearly, so we also need to do our homework. But at the same time, Ukraine must also carry out reforms.
Regarding Europe's participation at the negotiating table, who should speak with Russia on behalf of the European Union in the case of direct dialogue?
For me, the most important thing is that we discuss and agree on exactly what we will talk about with the Russians when we find ourselves at the negotiating table. It is not so important who exactly that person will be. What matters is what this person will say and what demands they will make.
Are you fully prepared to be that person, even with the fact that you are on Russia's wanted list?
Of course, this is one of my official duties. Obviously, I am ready to do it if necessary. But for now, we are not at that stage yet. The question lies elsewhere. What demands will we put forward?